It started with a birthday gift, a small, shiny thing sitting on my kitchen counter with a little red bow on top. My son Marcus had left it there before I woke up on a Sunday morning in March. A brand new smart thermostat, still in the box. He said he had installed it the week before when I was at my buddy Ray's house watching the game. Said it would help me save money on my power bill. He even showed me the app on his phone where you could see the temperature in every room. I thanked him. I meant it. I had no reason not to. I am 64 years old. I live alone in the house where I raised my two kids in a quiet neighborhood outside of Columbus, Ohio. I retired 3 years ago after working 28 years as a senior IT systems analyst for a regional hospital network. I say that not to brag, but because it matters for what comes next. I know how connected devices work. I know what they can see, what they can send, and where that information goes. When Marcus said the thermostat had a built-in camera for security features, I nodded like it was nothing. But something small and cold sat down in the back of my mind. I did not say anything that Sunday. I made eggs, drank my coffee, read the paper the way I always do. Marcus called around noon to ask if I liked it. I told him I did. He asked if I had set up the app on my own phone yet. I said I was going to do it later. He said great. He would walk me through it whenever I was ready. He sounded cheerful and easy the way he always does. Marcus has always been easy to talk to. That is one of the things about him. He has always known exactly what to say and when to say it. My name is Gerald. My kids call me Dad, and most everybody else calls me Jerry. I have a daughter named Felicia who lives in Phoenix with her husband and my two grandkids. And I have Marcus, who is 38, lives about 20 minutes from me, works in real estate development, and has, for as long as I can remember, kept a careful eye on the world around him the way a man keeps an eye on a card game he's trying to win. I love my son. That is not in question. What I learned about him over the weeks that followed is something I'm still working through. But I loved him before I found out, and the love did not disappear when I did. My wife Diane passed away 2.5 years ago. A stroke, sudden, on a Wednesday morning while she was watering the plants on the back porch. I found her when I came home from the grocery store. 41 years we were married. She was the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and kept extra birthday cards in the third drawer of the hall dresser, just in case. After she died, the third drawer sat full of cards she would never send, and I could not bring myself to throw them away. I still can't. The house felt enormous in a way it never had before, even though it was the same size it had always been. Marcus had started coming around more often after Diane died, which I welcomed. He would stop by on weekends, sometimes during the week. He took me to a few doctor's appointments when I was dealing with a knee issue. He helped me figure out my Medicare paperwork, which is enough to make anyone feel confused regardless of age. I appreciated it. I told him so, but somewhere in those gestures, without me being aware of when exactly it began, something shifted. The help started to come with questions attached. Questions about the house, about my finances, about what I was planning to do long term. The thermostat camera faced the main hallway. That hallway connects the front door, the kitchen, the living room, and the stairs leading up to my bedroom. Whoever had access to that camera's feed could see almost every movement I made inside my own home from the moment I came downstairs in the morning to the moment I went back up at night. They could see who visited me. They could see if I was limping more than usual, or moving slower, or was sitting in one place for too long. They could track my routines with a precision that would have taken weeks of physical surveillance to match. And all they had to do was check an app. I did not pull the thermostat off the wall. I want you to understand that clearly. I left it exactly where Marcus had installed it. I thanked him again the next time I saw him. I downloaded the app to my own phone and set up the account. I let him walk me through the features on a Tuesday evening while we ate the pizza he had brought over. I asked him questions about how the motion detection worked. He explained it patiently. He was proud of it, I think. Proud of being the one who knew how it worked and could explain it to his old man. I filed everything he said away, and I did not let my face change at all. I spent the next 10 days paying close attention. Not to the thermostat, but to Marcus. I have spent 28 years working in information systems, which means I've spent 28 years watching how people behave around data they think is private. There's a particular way a person moves when they believe they are watching without being watched. A looseness, a confidence that does not quite belong to the situation. I started to notice it in Marcus. Small things. The way he referenced what I had for breakfast during a phone call without me having mentioned it. The way he knew I'd gone to bed early on a Thursday before I told him. He was watching the feed. I was almost certain of it by the end of the first week. By the end of the second week, I had no doubt. He was checking it regularly, tracking my patterns, building a picture of my daily life with a level of detail that no caring son needs and only one kind of person wants. I thought about the word that kept coming back to me as I sat with all of this. The word was inventory. He was taking inventory of me, my health, my habits, my schedule, my visitors, the pace of my movement, the frequency of my trips to the refrigerator versus my trips to the front door. He was building a file. Then the financial questions started coming, and I understood what the file was for. It began, as it always does, with something that sounded like ordinary conversation. Had I thought about refinancing the house? Rafe are doing something interesting right now, apparently. A friend of his in mortgage lending had mentioned it. Then a week later, had I looked at my retirement accounts lately? The market had been a little bumpy, and some people his age, meaning his generation, had moved things around to be safer. Did I have someone watching mine? I told him I was fine. I had always managed things myself. He nodded. He let it rest. But he did not drop it. I want to stop here and tell you something about Marcus that is true and that I think matters. He is not stupid. He is not cruel in the way we usually picture cruelty, loud, obvious, mean. He is patient and thoughtful, and he knows how to make a person feel cared for. That is what makes this hard to explain to people who have not lived it. The person doing the harm is also capable of real warmth. Those two things exist in the same man, and I do not know how to make that simpler than it is. What I can tell you is that the warmth and the strategy are not separate. They're the same instrument being played for the same purpose. I call my daughter Felicia from my car, parked outside the library 3 blocks from my house, on a Saturday morning when Marcus thought I was running errands. I told her what I had found and what I suspected. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Dad, I have been worried about something for a few months, but I did not know how to bring it up." She told me that Marcus had called her in January asking questions about my estate planning. He had framed it as concern. Just wanted to make sure Dad has everything in order. He had asked whether I had a will, whether it was recent, whether anyone was listed as a financial power of attorney. Felicia had answered honestly because she thought it was a normal conversation between siblings. She understood now that it was not. I drove to see my attorney that same week. His name is Howard, and he has handled my family's legal work since Diane and I bought the house in 1991. He is 71 now and still practices 2 days a week out of an office above a dry cleaner on the west side of town. When I laid out everything I had observed, he did not say much for a moment. Then he picked up his pen and said, "Tell me again from the beginning, and this time I'm going to write it down." He took 6 pages of notes. By the end of our meeting, he had identified 3 things that concerned him legally, not just personally, but legally. First, Howard had found that 7 months earlier, someone had submitted a records request to the county probate court asking about the process for contesting a will on grounds of diminished capacity in an older adult. The request had come from an email account with a name Howard's assistant could not pin down exactly, but which shared a notable similarity to a business email address Marcus had used on a real estate document Howard had on file from a previous transaction. Second, Marcus had, in the past year, consulted with a financial planner whose primary specialty was elder wealth management and estate transition. Howard knew this because the planner had come up in a separate matter and was known for working with families in what he described in his materials as complex multi-generational transitions. Third, and this was the one that made the room feel smaller, Felicia had mentioned that Marcus had asked her in that same January phone call whether she thought I had shown any signs of memory trouble lately. Had I repeated myself? Forgotten appointments? Seemed confused about finances? He was framing it as a worried son asking a worried sibling a reasonable question. But Howard looked at me over the top of his glasses and said, "Gerald, that question has a function, and the function is not comfort." I sat there in that office with the sound of a passing truck bleeding through the window, and I felt something I had not felt since the morning I found Diane on the porch. The ground moving under me without warning. I went home. I cooked dinner. Marcus called to check in around 7. I told him about my day in the edited version I had been maintaining, errands, lunch at the diner on 4th Street, some yard work in the afternoon. He said that sounded nice. He said he was thinking about stopping by later that week to help me look at some paperwork about the house. I said that would be fine. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table in the quiet and thought about all the years I had spent teaching Marcus things. How to ride a bike in this driveway. How to change a tire. How to read a pay stub. How to treat a woman the way I had treated his mother. I thought about all of it, and then I went to the garage and started thinking like the IT analyst I used to be. I spent 2 evenings setting up what I will call my own documentation system. I created an encrypted folder on a laptop that I keep at my sister's house. Not here, never connected to my home network. I began logging dates, times, exact words from every conversation I had with Marcus that felt relevant. I wrote down the financial questions and when they had been asked. I recorded a short video of myself, date stamped, speaking clearly and directly about my own mental and financial state, my understanding of my assets, my intentions for my estate, and my awareness of the situation I was documenting. Howard had suggested this. He said on a Wednesday, and I did on a Thursday. Howard also contacted my bank's fraud prevention team and my brokerage firm's security department directly, with my authorization. New flags were placed on my accounts. Any attempted change to beneficiary designations, any large withdrawal, any attempt to add an authorized user would trigger an immediate verification call to me and a secondary alert to Howard's office. This was not visible to anyone who might attempt to access the accounts online. As far as the outside world was concerned, everything was exactly as it had always been. My accounts sat untouched. My passwords sat unchanged. The thermostat on my wall went on recording its feed to whoever was watching. Marcus came over on a Thursday evening as planned. He brought folders. He had printed documents, he said, that his financial contact had put together about the benefits of consolidating retirement accounts into a single managed portfolio. He had also, he mentioned casually, taken the liberty of asking a doctor he knew about the benefits of getting a cognitive baseline assessment at my age. Just to have on record. Nothing to worry about, he said. Just smart planning. He slid the doctor's card across the table toward me with the easy confidence of a man who believes he is being helpful. I picked up the card. I read the name. I set it down beside my coffee cup. I said I would think about it. I watched his face stay carefully still. I knew that doctor's name. Not personally, but Howard had encountered the same name in a separate context 3 months earlier, in a case involving an elderly man in our county whose family had used a cognitive assessment to support a power of attorney filing that the man later contested. The case had been settled quietly. The doctor was still practicing. The name on the card sitting next to my coffee cup was not a coincidence. I understood now the complete picture Marcus had been building. Camera to track my physical behavior. Financial access through guided account consolidation. A cognitive assessment on record from a doctor already connected to this kind of proceeding. And a probate inquiry already filed and waiting. I want to tell you what I did not do, because I think it matters as much as what I did. I did not yell. I did not confront Marcus that night at the kitchen table with the folders spread between us. I did not call him out. I did not let my face show what was happening behind it. I sat there with him for another 40 minutes, looking at the documents he had brought, asking reasonable questions, nodding at the appropriate moments. When he left, he hugged me at the door the way he always did and said he loved me. I said it back. I meant it even then, in that specific and terrible way you can mean something that is also breaking you. Howard moved the following week. He had been in contact with a colleague who specialized in elder financial abuse cases, and together they brought the full documentation to the county sheriff's office. The sheriff's detective who took the case was a woman named Lieutenant Carver. She was direct and thorough, and she did not treat me like someone who might be imagining things. She reviewed everything we had, the camera, the probate inquiry, the connection to the financial planner, the doctor's card, and its prior association with a contested POA case, the documented pattern of financial questioning, and Felicia's account of the January phone call. She said there was enough to proceed with a formal investigation. The decision I had to make was when to tell Marcus what I knew. Howard and Lieutenant Carver both advised me clearly. Not yet. Any premature disclosure would give him the opportunity to remove evidence, including the thermostat camera, and to retreat behind a version of events that painted his behavior as nothing more than a concerned son worrying about an aging parent. That story was not hard to construct. He had been constructing it for months already. The lawn, the pizza, the thermostat he installed to help me save money, the doctor he found because he cared about my health. Without the documentation, without the legal framework already in place, it was his word against mine, and I was the old man who had apparently become suspicious of his own family. So I played my final card. Howard had suggested it, and I had agreed because it was clean and it was true, and it was something Marcus could not argue with or work around. I updated my estate documents with Howard, formally, legally, with witnesses and notarization. The house went into a trust administered by Howard's firm. My investment accounts had their beneficiary designations updated, naming Felicia's children, my grandkids, directly. A durable power of attorney was established, naming Howard and Felicia jointly. Everything was filed. Everything was recorded. And then I invited Marcus to dinner on Friday night, and I told him, over the chicken I had made, that I had been doing some thinking about my estate, and I had made my decisions, and everything was taken care of. I watched him. He was good. I will give him that. He kept his expression neutral for several seconds. He said that was great, that he was glad I had gotten it handled. He asked if I had used Howard. I said yes. He asked if I had thought about the financial consolidation idea. I said I had thought about it and decided it was not for me. He nodded. He took a bite of chicken. He asked if I was feeling okay. I said I was feeling very clear, actually, about everything. And something in his face shifted, just barely, just for a moment, the way his signal shifts when it loses a connection. He knew. I could see that he knew that whatever he had been waiting for was no longer available. He called me 2 days later and said he needed to talk. He came over that Sunday and sat across from me in the living room, and I let him speak. He said he'd been worried about me. He said he had made some mistakes in how he had expressed that worry. He said the thermostat had a camera, and he knew he should have mentioned that up front. He said the financial suggestions had come from a real place of concern. He did not mention the probate inquiry. He did not mention the doctor with the prior POA case association. He did not mention the records request. He gave me the version of himself that could be understood as a scared son who had gone too far, but meant well. I listened to all of it. I did not tell him what I knew. Lieutenant Carver and the investigator from the State Attorney General's Financial Crimes Unit came to my house on a Monday morning. Marcus had been in contact with them separately and had, apparently, decided to be cooperative, which his attorney had presumably advised. The investigation lasted about 6 weeks in total. The documentation we had assembled, combined with financial records subpoenaed from the planner Marcus had been consulting, and records tied to the notary, whose name came up in the file Howard had been building, was more than sufficient. The notary had a prior complaint against him from a case in another county. He surrendered his license voluntarily before charges were filed against him formally. That was part of a negotiated agreement. Marcus was charged with attempted financial elder abuse and criminal conspiracy under Ohio law. His attorney negotiated the terms. He pled no contest to one of the 2 counts. He was sentenced to 24 months probation, mandatory financial restitution counseling, and community service. He was ordered to have no unsolicited contact with my financial accounts or my legal documents. There was no jail time. I did not object to that. I had thought carefully about what I wanted from the legal process, and what I wanted was documentation, accountability, and protection, not punishment for the sake of it. I'm not built that way, and I do not think it would have helped me. I sat in the courtroom for his sentencing. Felicia sat beside me, having flown in from Phoenix. Marcus stood at the front in a gray suit, and I looked at him the way you look at someone you have known longer than they have known themselves. The baby he was, the boy, the teenager I had driven to baseball practice 3 days a week for 4 years, the young man who had cried in my arms the night his mother died. I held all of that, and I held what I knew now, and I did not let one cancel out the other. Both things were true. I did not look away. He did not look at me. I understood that, and I let him have it. The thermostat came down that same week. I had a home security professional do a full sweep and replace it with a standard non-connected unit from the hardware store. No camera, No app, no feed. Just a thermostat that adjusts the temperature and does exactly nothing else. The professional found no other devices. The house was clean. I stood in the hallway afterward and looked at the new thermostat on the wall and felt something I had been carrying for months finally set itself down somewhere outside my body. It was not relief exactly. It was more like the particular quiet that follows a long and difficult job that you have done correctly. I want to say something to you directly now, because I think it is the most important part of everything I have told you, and it is the thing I see people misunderstand most often when they hear a story like this one. The camera was not the hardest part. The documentation was not the hardest part. The legal proceedings were not the hardest part. The hardest part was the period of time, those weeks, when I knew what I knew and had to continue living inside my normal life as though I did not know it. Having dinner with my son, thanking him for the thermostat, asking him to explain the app features to me like I was just a dad learning something new from his kid. That performance, held steady day after day, was the thing that cost the most. The second hardest part was this: understanding that the person I was protecting myself from was someone who also genuinely loved me in whatever way he was capable of. Those two things are not opposites. A person can love you and still decide that what you have is more interesting to them than you are. That is not a comfortable thing to carry. I carried it. I still carry it some days when I'm driving or when I walk past that third drawer in the hall dresser and think about Diane and what she would have said about all of this. I think she would have been sad in the way only mothers can be sad, deep down in the place where hope used to live, and then she would have said, "Jerry, you did right." I believe that. Felicia and I talk more now than we ever did. That is something I did not expect, a thing that grew in the space left by something else. She calls every Sunday and sometimes on Wednesday evenings just to talk, not about logistics, not about Marcus, just to talk the way her mother and I used to talk when we were sitting on the back porch after dinner watching the yard go dark. Those calls are good. They are one of the things I count when I am counting what I have, which I try to do regularly because at 64 and living alone in this house, the counting matters. It keeps things right-sized. It keeps the grief from filling every room. Marcus and I have not spoken since the sentencing. His probation terms permit contact if I initiate it. I have not. I do not know if I will. There's a version of a future in which I am ready for that conversation, and there's a version in which I am not, and I have stopped trying to predict which version will arrive. What I know is that I'm not waiting for it. I'm not holding the door open, and I am not slamming it shut. I am living my life in this house, in this neighborhood, with my woodworking and my Sundays, with Felicia and the third drawer in the hall that I still cannot bring myself to empty. That is enough. For now, that is more than enough. Let me tell you what I did after all of it was over, because I think the after matters as much as the during. I updated every piece of my financial and legal documentation properly, with full professional guidance, with the people I had chosen and trusted for reasons that had nothing to do with inheritance. I set up a formal check-in system with Howard and with my credit union's fraud team. I established a standing monthly call with both. I got a full physical and cognitive workup from my own doctor, a man I have seen for 11 years, not a stranger referred to me by someone with an interest in the results. My results were good. My memory is fine. My judgment, I am satisfied to say, has been tested and held. I also started talking about this quietly at first, and then more openly, because I discovered that nearly every person I told had a version of this story somewhere in their own life. A friend whose sister had slowly shifted control of their mother's bank accounts over 2 years. A neighbor whose stepson had moved in after his stepmother's death and had taken 6 months to move back out, having in that time accessed and copied every financial document in the house. A woman at my church who had given power of attorney to a nephew who she thought was helping her and who had spent 4 months trying to use it before she realized what was happening. These stories are everywhere. They're just quiet. They are quiet because shame keeps them quiet. The shame of the person who is targeted, who feels they should have seen it sooner, who worries that telling the story confirms the thing the other person was trying to prove, that they were vulnerable, that they needed managing, that their judgment had slipped. Let me say this as plainly as I know how. Being targeted by someone who knows you well and uses that knowledge to build a strategy against you is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that someone made a choice to harm you. That choice is theirs. The vulnerability that comes with grief and aging and living alone is human. Using it against someone is not. The woodworking class I joined after Diane died has become one of the anchors of my week. I meet there on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and I am currently building a corner shelf unit with hand-cut joints that has given me considerably more trouble than I expected, and that I am beginning to suspect may outlive me simply because I keep having to redo sections of it. There's a man in the class named Vernon who is 71 and has been woodworking since before I was born, and who looks at my joints with a patience that borders on sainthood. He tells me I'm getting better. Some weeks I believe him. The shelf is not done, but it is getting there. I want to say one more thing about the camera before I finish. The thermostat is gone, but I think about what it represented and what it was designed to do, which was to make me observable without my knowledge, to turn my ordinary life into data that someone else could use to build a case about who I was and what I was becoming. And I think about how many people are living inside that same kind of observation without knowing it. Not always a camera, sometimes a patter of questions, sometimes access to accounts that was offered as convenience and accepted as help. Sometimes a person who keeps showing up with folders and suggestions and the name of a doctor who can provide the right kind of documentation. Pay attention to what is being built around you. That is the only thing I know how to say about it. Pay attention to what access has been quietly extended, to who knows what about your finances, to which helpful gestures also happen to open doors. You do not have to be paranoid. You do not have to treat every kind act as a scheme. But if something in you has already started paying attention, if there is already a question sitting quietly at the back of your mind that you have been explaining away, do not keep explaining it away. Look at it directly. Trust what you see when you do. I found a camera in my own home that my son had installed without my knowledge or consent. Instead of confronting him, I documented everything quietly and carefully and brought it to the right people. I protected my finances, my home, my legal rights, and my ability to make my own decisions, which no one, not even someone I love, has the right to take from me. I did this while grieving a wife I miss every single day, while managing a knee that still gives me trouble on cold mornings, while attending woodworking class twice a week, and eating too many frozen dinners, and calling my grandkids on video chat, and doing all the ordinary things a 64-year-old man does in a house that is too quiet but still his. I am telling you this because I think this story matters, not as a warning to be afraid, but as evidence that it is possible to navigate something like this with clarity and patience and your dignity intact. You do not have to be defeated by the people who decide your vulnerability is an opportunity. You do not have to be ashamed of the love that made you miss the signs. You just have to be willing to look once you have started to see, and then you have to keep looking until you understand what you're dealing with. And then you have to do what needs to be done. I did those things. I'm still doing them. Every day in this house is evidence that it worked. There's a thing that happens when a long and difficult chapter of your life ends and the next one has not yet announced itself. The house is quiet. You sit at the kitchen table with your coffee in the morning, and the only sounds of the refrigerator and the birds outside, and whatever your own mind decides to bring you before the day fully starts. Some mornings that quiet is peaceful. Some mornings it is the loneliest sound I have ever heard. Both kinds of mornings are mine. I do not try to choose between them anymore. I let them be what they are. I drink the coffee. I get up. I go about the day that is in front of me, and I do my best not to confuse the difficulty of the present with the impossibility of what comes next. Felicia is bringing the grandkids out in June. They are 8 and 11, and they find the idea of Grandpa's woodshop absolutely fascinating in a way that involves asking to touch every tool within 3 seconds of arriving. I am building a small step stool for the younger one, so she can reach the bathroom sink without having to ask for help. It has been the easiest project I have done in the class yet, and I still managed to cut one board a 1/4 inch too short on the first try. Vernon saw it happen and did not say a word. He just handed me another piece of wood. That is the kind of man to have in your corner. I am grateful for him. I do not know what Marcus is doing now. I do not track it. I heard through Felicia that he completed the first phase of his counseling requirement and that he has moved to a different part of the city. Whether he has reckoned with what he attempted to do, Whether he has found a version of himself that does not look at his father and see a balance sheet, I cannot tell you. I hope he has. I mean that with the same part of me that held him as a baby and taught him to read and drove him to baseball and stood beside him at his mother's funeral. That part of me does not disappear because of what happened. It just lives in a different room now. Why do not open every day? You do not have to live in a state of suspicion to protect yourself. That is the final thing I want to leave you with. You can love the people in your life fully and still keep your eyes open. You can accept help gracefully and still know exactly where your documents are and who has access to what and whether the devices in your home are there for your comfort or for someone else's information. These are not hostile acts. They are the acts of a person who understands that love and trustworthiness are not the same thing and that the difference between them matters most in the moments when you most want them to be identical. Take care of yourselves. Get your documents in order with someone you chose for the right reasons. Know what you have and know who knows it and know why. If someone has installed something in your home in your absence, whether a device or a plan, you are allowed to find it. You are allowed to look. You are allowed to protect what is yours with the full weight of the law standing behind you. I did that. I am standing on the other side of it telling you it is possible. The house is still mine. The corner shelf is still unfinished. The third drawer in the hall still has birthday cards in it. And I am still here. Tell me where you're watching from. I mean that. You're not alone.